This week in Post, accentuating the details in a splash of water. Hi everyone, my name is Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. In today's video, we are going to accentuate the details in this big splash of water. If you saw the In the Field episode earlier this week, I was capturing this wave crashing into these rocks along the Oregon coast, and I want to go through specifically the processing steps for getting the fingers of water to show up. It's not a lot. It's actually a pretty straightforward technique, but it really does have a pretty good impact on the overall photo. Let's have a look at what we've got here and really quickly run through the basics of what I've done. Here's a crop, really tightened it up just so I can make everything all about this splash of water, and did my basic processing. Let me hit the backslash key so you can see beforehand. Very washed out, very hazy. There was a lot of spray flying around, and that's throwing a lot of white into the scene. And so reined that in quite a bit with the basic panel as well as gradients. I've got two of them here. One here that's covering roughly the upper half, and that is doing some dehazing and adding back a little bit of the color. And then there's a second one right over here, and that's just kind of lowering the exposure of this upper right corner there to bring that in line with the rest of the scene. Now for the water splash, what's going on here? These are brushes. So I've got the adjustment brush here, and I've got two of them. Let me show you the first one. I'll tap on this one, hover for a minute. I'm covering the whole of the wave. Well, not whole, but most of the wave. And I'm not doing really dodging and burning here. You can see that I'm adding contrast. I'm adding quite a healthy amount of clarity as well as sharpness. And so if I turn that off for a moment and turn it back on, you're really going to see that really amp up. I've actually got a third brush down here I haven't talked about yet either, but I'll hover on that for a minute. You can see what's happening there. But let me zoom in even a little bit more on this because it's, there we go. It's worth getting up and close on this one so we can really see what's happening. So again, no brushes, brushes. And you can see that we've got some darkness going on underneath here. This is much sharper, and there's a few accents to really kind of get these different fingers of water going on here. So this first brush we were talking about earlier, that's covering most of the water to add contrast and sharpness. That's what I want to be very, very sharp. Even though this water is in motion, it's not a long exposure in the sense of, multiple minutes. There's still a lot of, fury, anger, bursting going on here. I want to keep that sharpness and boost it up. This second brush, this one's very subtle. Let me hover here for a minute. Just these little tiny touches. This is dodging, right? We're adding some exposure. And so in these little areas in between, like here, let me hover on that again so it stays on the screen. Look where all the red is going. And you'll see as I move the cursor away, when I remove the cursor now, we've got these brighter patches here. Just little accents to provide bits of separation between some of the splashes and some of the whitewash in between. And the last brush, which I actually have hiding down here, I'll hover on that. This is darkening. So this is our burning, right? So I'm darkening the rocks around here, and let me zoom back out for that one. That is way too far. There we go. So we're darkening the foreground rocks again, so it's making that wave pop more, and a few little dodging accents in the fingers of water. Playing on, we had a brighter streak right in this area here. Let me turn on this different cursor here. Right in here, and then in between that, like on the underside of it, darkening just a little bit. So it's like contrast, right? You're accentuating the differences between highlights and shadows, but doing it with the brushes in a very controlled way, so you have the final say on what gets brightened, what gets darkened, and how those different splashes of this wave will come through. Oh, I realized I forgot to talk about this one other brush. Let me hover over that one over here. This is another burning, we're lowering exposure. So around the wave, around this big splash, I want to darken these areas here so that this gets more attention. And so the sum total of that, again, before any of the brushing. So the foreground, it's a little bit bright, as are these rocks to the side, this patch of ocean. And there's some contours and detail in here, but not as much as we want. Turn those brushes back on. After this has been darkened, my eye is going to be drawn here a little bit more. Much more detail in these different little fingers and streaks of water. Did some dodging and burning to bring out more of like, almost like it's a hand reaching up from the ocean. And then did some burning out here on the sides once again to kind of accentuate here. This burning action is almost like a vignette to draw the eye in toward that wave splash. The tip of the week, I suppose, is you do need to handcraft that final touch on your wave splash. So the burning around the outside of it, that's pretty standard fare, right? We're going to just draw the eye toward the brighter part. And with that first brush that was a relatively sloppy brush stroke that added the contrast and the sharpness into the wave, fine, that's relatively basic as well. It's those fine-tuning things where I chose to do dodging and burning here. I could have been adding more sharpness, something like that, but to follow the contours of the water with those brush strokes to really get that perfect looking wave. And that will do it for this week in post. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, let me know somehow. Share this with a friend, comments on the video, share it on social media, and send in questions. Love getting questions. And you'll get an answer in a day or two usually. And if you don't, then you have the right to ask me again. And then I'll respond in a day or two. Well, until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Happy shooting. And my phone is ringing. Gosh. Now that I've yanked the phone out of the wall, we could try this again. And that's going to do it for this week in photo. Frederick Van Johnson, if you're watching, future host for you right here.